churches, pictures of sepia, eyes with patterns and leaves. They brought me something that's left me, something vital has changed me. This time now, I'm left in a pile of lost memories.
There are two sides of the art world. There's at least two sides. There's the pros. Those are the guys that are in, they're signed by Gagosian and Mary Boone and these huge names, and they're sold at Sotheby's, and their work goes for hundreds of thousands or in the low millions or whatever. You know, there's those guys, and then there's the rest of us. The rest of us aren't making enough off of our art to survive as artists. So what do? We get jobs, you know. We're not on welfare. We're working people. Nobody gave us the silver spoon and said, hey, you're an artist now. You are liberated from everything real. All you have to do is what's in your mind and create. That's more of something that we have to do as self-medication. That's what the Antagonist is there for. We are the other guys. And now we're actually building and getting bigger and bigger, and our work's getting better. Everything's kind of coalescing, and the more that we travel, the more that we do these shows and meet all these different connections all over the world, and the more of a force we become. You know, we're never gonna be Jeff Koons. I think we're going to take it as far as we can.
So I know that you guys did a mural downtown. I overheard you guys talking, and you guys both said this is our first time ever doing a mural.
Well, we found these old drawings of girls from, what were they, like?
From like the 50s and 60s, they're like
dress pattern drawings.
You used to buy to like make your kids' clothes.
Right.
Yeah.
Only pair of nice pants, and they're all fucking fucked up. I gotta go buy new pants.
I'm left in a fog of memories.
You want a flat thing?
No. I could tape it. I can use my hand.
I don't need friends, I need allies this time now.
The Antagonists are kind of the school at a bar. Every Thursday you go, and whether you're showing or you're not showing, you are critiquing and you are active. You're in a conversation and you're embracing people, and you meet so many weirdos and so many people that later down the line, 10 years down the line, they're your friends still. It is kind of like school in that way. First rule at the Antagonist movement is you do what you say you're gonna do. The second you break that rule, you're full of shit, no one wants to work with you anymore. And I think that that's really a big lesson in life. And if you say that you're gonna have work at the it was just like that. So you better be there at 8 o'clock with your work to hang so your show's ready by 9. The second thing that we learned was quick installation, fixing problems, everything that went along with the Antagonist, and cleaning up and being respectful. I had no idea about how much respect you have to give to get a little bit back. But it really, you do. You gotta be clean, you gotta be punctual, you gotta be on time, and you gotta be respectful. These are lessons that should be taught in school and are not.
And I say, like, I don't look at it as like a school that I went to. It's a school I'm still going to.
This movement, I would have been fucking crazy. I don't even think I'd live in New York City if I didn't have the Antagonist movement. I'm kind of nomadic by nature. I would have moved on a long time ago. And now I found my home in Brooklyn. I can't leave. But a lot of that is the artist community that we've built and the family that I've kind of created through my friends.
You can always do one more if you want to. Yeah, it's up to you. But I think we'll do it like a quick guitar overdub. Does that sound good? Just to thicken the guitars up, and then we'll dive right into the vocals. And action.
Action.
She's back on birthday, and
Since we met the Antagonist movement last year, we found that we share a lot of the same work ethic, and their mission statement is something that we can really get behind. They really inspired us to do a lot of things. We've been doing more shows. We started our own collective called Stout City, Texas, as well as a record label that helps independent bands get noticed.
So we do a podcast called the Old Man and Bitter Girl podcast, or OMBG podcast. We had this idea to make a zine branched off from the podcast.
So Tim does all the writing and stuff for it, so I sit here after he gets all the work together and do all the layout.
A fanzine it's an amateur-made magazine. It can cover any kind of genre, like music, art. It's a labor of love. There's something about somebody putting something, and especially on printed paper, that to me is like a lost art. If you want to start a revolution, distribute some literature, man, and put your opinion out there and see what happens. Back in the 1830s, they had a cannon that was stationed in Gonzales, Texas. The whole town showed up with guns, and the cannon was posted up ready to fire, and they hoisted this flag that had a cannon on it, and it said, "Come and take it."
They're a very interesting monster because you have so much room to work with, so much room to play with. You're not stuck to a certain format. And with the zine, you have complete creative control. The style can vary. I've seen some zines out there that literally look like someone just got a whole bunch of photos, collaged it together with some glue, and then took a typewriter and typed it out.
We live in a small town. It's nothing like New York or a big city. And I grew up in an even smaller town. The life that we had in reality was so mundane. And when I discovered punk rock, when I was a kid, it was my answer for this shitty, stale life. Here in this town, everything's blank. Everyone's trying to make all their lawns pretty and great, and it's like something out of Edward Scissorhands, and everything's trying to be so prefabricated. It's not nice. It sucks. It's plain. It's boring. But out of that cookie cutter fabric, if you make cookies and you keep punching that fucking mold down in there, you're gonna have all this excess crap that's left over, and we're the excess crap. And I love it. I love being the excess crap because that's the first thing that gets eaten by the cook.
Well, I grew up in a really, really small town of about 2,000 people, and this type of lifestyle is not necessarily looked very highly upon, and I never really fit in anywhere. I kind of hung by myself and read a lot. When I was younger, I went through a bad stage of depression. My mom, she was very active in the church, and there was a guy there who gave bass lessons, and I had been playing for a while, and so he kind of took me under his wing and taught me bass. From there, I met a crew of people. We kind of started our own band at 16, and what saved my life was the music and the people that I met. And I finally found a place where I fit in, where I wasn't just, I don't know. Yeah. It was nice to feel like I was a part of something, like I was doing something important, and that kind of transpired to the art. It's kind of become a driving force to keep me going and to keep me from falling back into the dark spots that's so easy to find. And that's pretty much all I can say. I was about to start crying.
Hey everybody, it's Tim with the OMBG podcast, and in the studio with us today is Ethan Minsker. Did I say that correctly, Ethan?
Yep.
All right, awesome. With the Antagonist movement, and he's in town for the Victoria, Texas Film Festival. And we talked with Rubio and Chris a little bit earlier, but I wanted to actually talk to you a little bit more about it because I know you are a founding member of the Antagonist art movement. Is that correct?
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about how it started, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, I'd like to say, it was three of us in a bar. Anders Olsen, who's a painter, excellent painter. Sergio Vega, you guys might know him as a bass player for a band called Quicksand and also the Deftones. It sounds like a joke, but a filmmaker, writer, artist, musician.
Walk into a bar.
But we all actually worked in the bar together.
Uh-huh.
New York City is a bunch of people trying to do something creative. There wasn't really a lot of outlets for you to do anything unless you were bringing in a lot of money for the gallery. We just wanted to create a place where we could, first off, show our own work and also the work of our friends, and then figuring there's probably a larger community out there of people who need a place to show.
And around what year was that?
That was 2000.
Okay. So it's been going on for quite some time now.
13 years.
And over the ups and downs that you guys have had, you guys have actually branched out even more than a lot of things overseas.
You're talking about world domination?
Yes.
I understand that. We weren't really setting out to get a bunch of branches in different countries or any of that thing. It's by the virtue of nature of our events that we had an open call for artists. We started receiving artist submissions from all over the world. Having an artist come from Berlin, having an artist come from South America, or having people find out about us from our projects then led us to other countries.
When you see like a first-time artist with their first show, finally getting questions asked about themselves and being able to talk about the art, that's got to be probably one of the best feelings in the world.
And that's an amazing thing, because a lot of times all you need is a chance, and that chance can lead to something more. There's some artists out there that really have talent, but they don't have the ability to have a venue or get shown. And if you can just say to them, here's a chance, do the best you can, it might lead to the next thing.
Briefly, like the benefits of having writers, artists, screen printers all in the same group. Can you talk about that?
It's the concept of mixing and matching, and we are open to all types of art. And by being open to all types and all forms of art, then you can expand not just your knowledge, but what you do creatively.
I see the antagonist movement as starting really more like 6 months or a year before it actually started, because it was just a conversation that a lot of us were having. Especially I remember me and Ethan having this on Wednesday nights when we worked together. There was an antagonist that worked in a bar in the East Village every night of the week. Basically, was us going around to different bars and hanging out and getting drunk and making t-shirts and making art and setting up shows. And from the first time we did an event, there was a ton of people there. There was way more people than were in the bar the Thursday prior to that. And then when we did our first group show, we had a line out the door and down the block on 7th Street and Avenue A. I say almost immediately, I realized that it was gonna be something bigger than just, 5 or 6 of us hanging out in a bar talking shit. So it started growing immediately, and it's just continued to grow ever since then. That was just in the East Village. Now we're, have shows in Berlin and Lisbon and Ecuador in a few months. Chihuahua, Mexico City, so I'm always excited at how big it keeps getting and what the next thing is that happens.
Tell me what you're thinking of it. Don't waste your time, gonna wonder why we've waited. You know it'll never happen till we make it. Oh, far away, we'll make it happen. Oh, far away, we'll find out. Oh, far away, we'll make it happen. Oh, far away, we'll find out.
There was a point where I didn't have to make art. I did it because it was fun and I liked it. And the switching point to where it became something that I had to do was me thinking about how I was raised and the religion I was raised in and whether or not I believed what I was taught my whole life. And I came to a conclusion that I didn't. So, that's a major thing. That was probably around like 25 or something, and when I lost my religion, it was painful, psychologically, emotionally, on a lot of levels, and art is my way of finding my religion again. For me, personally, there's like only 2 choices, and one is doing lots of drugs and the other is doing art. Instead of doing dope, I do art.
Tenement kids with their running nose, they run down the stairs wearing
When I was about 6 years old, they discovered I was dyslexic. With a severe learning disability, I had problems with codes and symbols, translation between the two, meaning reading and writing and math were all things that were difficult for me. I excelled in comprehension. I could understand complex theories, but when it came to reading and writing, my skills were way behind the other kids my age. It is not easy growing up with a learning disability, and people don't really understand what that means. I don't see things differently, but I learned early on there were ways to get around that by having people reading over what I write. I was never going to be like the normal kids. Making art is a way of capturing and controlling at least one small element of my life. Since writing and those things were taken away from me, doing fanzines and writing novels became a very important goal for me. With the Antagonist movement, they provided me with the assistance and help. They support what I'm doing because they have faith in the projects themselves. When it comes to my own depression, I don't think it's anything unique. The times that I haven't worked on my art, I've felt cut off from the world.
Can't sleep, hold me now.
I grew up in Washington, D.C. in the 70s and 80s. I moved to New York in 1988, and I had a lot of friends that succumbed to the violence. If I could just make one piece of artwork that could live as a memorial to myself or a marker on a gravestone, that I would be happy. And maybe that's part of the creative process that I need to go through that drives me to work on the next project. But the reality is I'll probably never be happy with anything that I make. I think at some point every artist thinks about their audience and who they're making their work for. And for me, that's always been one person, and that is my daughter. Before she was even born, when she was only a concept, by writing the books and making the films and doing this artwork was a way that I could have a personal relationship with my daughter, even if I wasn't around. I think being an artist probably means you're a little bit crazy.
Yo estoy trabajando con los antagonistas desde el 2010. Hemos estado involucrados haciendo algunos proyectos de mail art. Después me cambié de casa acá a Nueva York y ellos fueron uno de los que me ayudaron a encontrar trabajo y a no trabajar solo de mesero o recogiendo platos en restaurantes, sino involucrarme en los trabajos involucrados con el arte. Estoy asistiendo a Arturo Vega, que es un artista legendario aquí en el Bowery, y también estoy trabajando en una galería de arte. Estoy haciendo los montajes de las exposiciones. Entonces, creo que ha sido importante para este proceso como artista, como empezar aquí en Nueva York. Me han ayudado mucho. Creo también que ha sido interesante entender el trabajo en colectivo que hacen porque yo vengo trabajando en Ecuador mucho con colectivos. Sé que los antagonistas son distintos en ese punto. Sé que no son políticos, sé que siempre se tratan de alejar de las cosas políticas. Y yo me considero una persona muy política, entonces una distancia al respecto de los antagonistas en ese sentido. Son más bien como un grupo de apoyo que es muy importante aquí en Nueva York, especialmente porque todo es tan individualista y la gente está siempre pensando en lo suyo y interesada. Y ellos son como un grupo de amigos que se ayudan y que se encuentran trabajo y que se apoyan, especialmente como artistas, ¿no? Pues creo que eso es importante. Por otro lado, creo que el que vayan a Ecuador va a ser bueno para que encuentren otras formas de trabajo en colectivo. Creo que va a ser muy valioso para ellos, tengan otras nuevas experiencias en Sudamérica. Creo que la primera vez que sentí terror en mi vida fue cuando tenía 4 años y empecé a oír voces, empecé a oír cosas en la mente que eran como que no estaban en mi control. Por ejemplo, me iba a dormir y la última palabra que pensaba, por ejemplo, mañana tengo clases, se repetía de una forma en la que después usaba toda mi mente y me paralizaba por completo. Y era un terror inimaginable que nunca he sentido y creo que ha sido la cosa que más me ha dado pánico en mi vida. Y eso pasó por mucho tiempo, por lo menos unos 2 años. Y visitamos muchos doctores con mi familia, estaban muy preocupados porque tenía mucho miedo de irme a dormir, miedo de todo, miedo de la oscuridad, miedo de todo, hasta que fuimos donde un psiquiatra que dijo que algo bien interesante. Él dijo que esto era antes considerado un regalo y que la gente en otras culturas lo podía usar para su beneficio, para el beneficio de la comunidad. Y eso es lo que me dio la idea de explorarlo y de seguir como entendiendo el miedo. Entendiendo el miedo en realidad. Entonces lo que yo hacía es tratar de inducir ese sentimiento y controlarlo desde muy pequeño. Ser un extraterrestre recién haber llegado a este mundo es el observar realmente las cosas, ¿no? Entonces el dibujo es lo que a mí me ayuda a observar realmente las cosas y a agarrar todos los detalles y otra vez entrar. Más se borre y que sienta que estoy haciendo lo que tengo que hacer en esta vida. Entonces, creo que el arte ha sido lo que me ha llevado, especialmente el dibujo ha sido lo que me ha llevado a sobreponerme y vivir sin miedo y vivir con ganas de descubrir el misterio de la vida. Yeah.
Our society is filled with branding. You can't really go anywhere, especially in New York City, without having someone's brand being forced upon you. To deny that would be a waste of effort, you as an artist. The people that are offended by that, you probably do not want as your audience anyway. You're looking for like-minded individuals. And the people that will respond to that, the people that take the time to get to know your work, those are the people that you want to build up a longer relationship with. Everybody else is null and void. They do not matter. They do not fit into the equation of what you are doing.
Some old clothes and stuffed them with hay. Gonna make me a scarecrow. Gonna make a scarecrow to scare away all the ghosts.
The Antagonist movement for me was a complete lifeline when I moved to New York. I moved in 2004, and even though I was born here, I didn't have a lot of friends per se, but I did have an old friend from high school named Ethan Minsker. And when I moved to the city, I instantly had a support network, a community of people, a reason to make art, and even a job, which is something that we do in the Antagonist movement, is we'll try to help each other get work. So it's more than just art shows, it's a very supportive community, which helps us in every part of our lives. So much to the bar owner's chagrin, Ethan hired me under their noses, and so I started working Thursday nights in the East Village, helping set up the art for our art shows and our bar night, which is one of the ways we used to fund projects in the Antagonist movement, is we got a small percentage of a night at a bar. And it was an incredible tenure, even though it was about 7 years. When I was trying to get art shows, like I still am, I would always have some relatives say, well, why don't you just take your stuff into a gallery and show them? Be aggressive. If this is what you really want to do, you should try this. Well, that's not how it works. No one walks into a gallery and gets a show in New York. The commercial gallery system is locked. It's locked. And unless you went to the right schools or your parents are famous art collectors, you are not going to be able to cold call a gallery. I still don't know how to do it 8 years on. We were instrumental in giving a lot of people their first shows in New York. And while it wasn't a show in a commercial gallery in Chelsea or Soho or 57th Street, for a lot of people, it meant just as much. I oftentimes had people say, this is my first show in New York, and I just moved here, I can't believe it. So it was incredibly rewarding in that sense. And we also got a lot of really cool things done. It gave people a boost. The bar night was amazing because a lot of the people that were volunteering, helping out, setting up the shows showed up every week, like it or not, sick or tired, cold or raining or whatever. And it was a great motivator as well as a great
reason for us all to get together every week. Since we've lost that, I don't know how we're gonna keep it going as focused and concentrated as we have in the past. When I was an adolescent, I had a very traumatic year, and I turned to music and art as a way of coping with it. You know, even in school counseling or church, no one talks about that sort of thing, the dark things, depression and mental illness and alcoholism. I mean, emotionally, I think I just wanted to escape. As a mode of life, art is an incredible, edifying practice. So the way of looking that art provides me enhances being alive. I don't see it as a therapy for another way of living. What I found was a community of people who didn't just take things for granted or take things for their surface value, didn't accept what corporate culture was telling them or forcing them to buy. You know, I've never really looked back. There is no other way of living for me at this point.
Somewhere to go on a Sunday. My bartender, my friend, great reader, writer, Richard Allen.
All right. Hello. This story is actually edited from a larger story, and it's probably one of the most embarrassing moments in my life. I hope you enjoy it. I did. It's the summer of 1980, the second summer since relocating to Florida from Oakland. I'm 16 and the 70s are over. The White House has an actor in it, and I hope his term will be as ineffective as his acting career. 11 years ago in 2002, the Antagonist Movement put together Fahrenheit, which was an open mic reading series presented at Black and White Bar from 8 to 10 every Sunday night. And it's been an ongoing Sunday night ritual at Black and White. It was weekly, and it's now monthly. We used to have themes. We actually, when it first started, it was a contest. People voted on who was the best writer that particular night. It was like a silent vote. We've had every type of writer in there. We've had comics, we've had poets. We didn't encourage poetry at first. We actually threatened to throw things at poets, but eventually they worked their way in. It was mostly short stories. It was a challenge for people to get up there and write a story about something mostly personal in their lives, you know, because we draw on our own experiences from what we've lived. And my first experiences doing that was difficult because I was standing in front of a group of peers, essentially, in a way, you know, it sounds cheesy, but naked, you know, exposing myself. And the thing about reading at a mic, as much as the audience gets something out of the actual reading, it's hearing yourself and hearing your words and hearing yourself deliver those words to an audience. I mean, the first few times I walked up to the mic, you could hear the paper shake in the microphone because I was so nervous about what I was reading about. I mean, it's all just my past. It's nonfiction that might be embellished. It's funny to find how you cover your own pain in your writing. Like when you get too close to the fire, how you move away from it. I went through a certain phase of my life where I was getting high and I was fresh out of a rehab, and I had a lot of stories in my head, but a lot of them were very personal, and it wasn't the easiest thing to sit down and write about. I eventually did, and I remember the first story I ever wrote was about a friend of mine who was somebody I lived with who wound up getting killed, and me having to deal with the cops and identifying him. And she looks like a girl Varga misplaced and wanted back. Or maybe she was designed by Hugh Hefner in some secret bunny lab. She was wearing tight black jeans with pumps and too thin belts slung low on her hips. The tube top she wore was buckling under the strain, and as she got closer, I could see a pin on her book bag, The Clash. This has got to be a self-fulfilling hallucination. No high school girl looked like her. Maybe she was 22. Maybe she was left back 4 years. I have to talk to her. Please, God, let her have been raised fatherless and Catholic. The sexual ramifications could be staggering. Creating something within that life, in that world you live in, it takes you away from it, essentially. And it also shows you how to look at it in a different light, which is exactly what writing's done for me. I see things in a different light now. I hear the sound of heels getting closer. Andy's face looks like that of a dog with its head out the window going for a joyride. I turn and it's her, wearing a dress she poured herself into, and fishnets like an electric fence to the promised land. She hands me a pill. Here, have one. And with a full belly of cheap wine, I swallow it without taking my eyes off of her. Are you going in, I ask? Maybe. Let's go for a walk. I feel a wave crash over me. What was that pill? A Quaalude. I shut my car door. Can you undo this? Yeah. Still seated with the steam and the sweat coating the windows of my car, I look up and vomit all over both of us. All the cheap wine and Quaalude residue that filled my gut. We washed up in the surf, fell asleep in the car. We saw each other a few more times and then she was gone. The smell of Tickle Pink lasted longer. Thanks.
From the start, the antagonist movement has tried to avoid the political issues. In 2000, everybody was pushing to the left or to the right, and now it's even worse. I think if you want to have a group that's inclusive, you have to leave politics to the side. We are an art group. Our focus is on art, not the politics of it. Each individual artist can express their own politics through their individual art, but the overreaching theme of the group should be free of politics. If you took a survey of the artists we work with, I would say we are overwhelmingly liberal. But at the same time, we don't want to discourage the conservative artist out there from being involved with us. If you believe yourself to be a free thinker, then you shouldn't be intimidated by the views of somebody else. And I do think there is a political aspect to what we do, but that resides in the economics of art. I appreciate the art market in New York City. It has its points and it has its values. But what it can't do is provide a space for unproven and unknown artists. The antagonist movement exists in that space between obscurity and the commercial art world. Most of us work on these projects, put our own money into these projects. We lose money. Everybody in our group would love to make an income off of their art. When we're creating work, we worry about the integrity, not the buyer. And I think that's the difference between making something that's commercial and non-commercial when it comes to art. If you leave room for those unheard voices, you may discover something that is truly unique and truly amazing, something that will inspire us all.
off, let me set the stage. No rules dive weren't gonna find me behaved. She made my mouth water and my senses grow sharp.
I became involved with the Antagonist movement in 2009 and started curating shows and participating in shows in 2010. And as the year had progressed, ultimately, I was asked to be part of the next project, which was called The Dolls of Lisbon, taking place in Lisbon, Portugal. After working there for 10 days and having a life-changing experience, came back and the group offered me the opportunity to go back to school at NYU Heyman Center for Philanthropy and Fundraising in order to form our other organization, Citizens for the Arts, which is completely separate from the group, but has the same mission statement in order to help foster and develop other artists in areas where they'd be a little lesser known. When people say, you're not political enough, I don't even know what that means. I don't agree with that statement whatsoever. And if that's the case, if you want to be political, go to some other group. This group likes to support people. They like to have communities grow. They like to work with other artists. I mean, at least have something where you know you have a common goal and you're working towards the same thing. I don't think it needs to be all about politics. And it's important to know that there is someone out there who is willing to show your work, investigate your work, and really not be afraid to support what you're doing. So it's important for artists to know that they don't have to work alone. There's other outlets for them to work with other people who do care about what they do. So when I was a little girl, my parents had a pretty rough breakup. You know, I was really young. I don't really remember much of it. I was 6 years old. But I do remember the shitty things that happened. And I do remember not seeing my mom because she had to work and we bounced around with different relatives. And it sucked. Man, my dad, he did some pretty cruel things to separate the family. And some things I just can't forgive him for. I missed out on a lot of my childhood. I missed out on my mom. Sorry. I missed out on a lot of things where I could have had a family unit and understood it a little bit better. I feel like I don't have one still, with the exception of the group. But, you know, he kind of just left us. He didn't care. You know, my brother was sick, my mom was sick. So you're leaving 3 people kind of to fend for themselves. It's really hard to talk about him because he still is very a selfish person. He doesn't care. I felt for a while I dropped off. I felt like I was just doing it to please other people, but really it was to validate myself. The reason why I still do art now is I can't stop. It's compulsive. If I stop, I pace, I don't know what to do with myself. All these things that I don't want to think about come up, almost to the point where it's dwelling on them, and I don't want to dwell on anything. I want to keep positivity going. This type of artwork that I do, it all has to do with the conversations that you have with other people, the dialogue. It all comes to a head in your piece. And in my pieces, if you look at them, part of it's anger, regret, wishing that things were different. I'm an emotional lady and I express it through my artwork. The group is definitely a huge part of my life. In a city of 8 million people, wherever you go, there's always a friend. It's something that's warm and inviting, and we all have this common understanding. We may not be held together by blood, but we are held together by the same core set of beliefs and what we want to do and what we want to accomplish. And to me, that's a family. Someone who will always support you, be honest with you, and tell you what's what.
Okay, absolutely, yeah.
Baby bottle.
I'd like to also say this is the fanzine release party. So that fanzine comes out maybe quarterly, whenever we get around to it. We've been doing that fanzine since 1988. So we're looking for stories for that. There's a contact in there. We can give you the info. It's 500 words or less. It also comes with a visual artist that we're looking for. Our first reader is going to be Richard Allen.
I'm going to read a story that Ethan put out in one of his fanzines. That's the reason I chose this one. I know the piss-eyed Shylock holding it is not going to use it in the confines of this Bowery flophouse, but the rock cocaine making his hand shake and the faultiness of this simple cocked mechanism does have me tingling.
I grew up in Buffalo, New York, in a Republican, conservative, Jewish home. My parents were upper middle class. My dad was a World War II vet, but mostly I always thought of my dad as a grumpy old Jew. He had this temper that was just out of control, and he would just lose his temper. And I found his temper frightening, yet amusing, a lot like the opening of Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. At the age of 12, I got sent up from the dinner table for misbehaving, and my dad followed me up into my bedroom where I had a little microphone and a tape recorder and my AM radio set up where I would record songs off the radio. So at 12 years old, as I was getting yelled at by my dad, I hit record on my microphone and I taped my dad for the first time. I continued taping my parents until I was about 28 years old. Most of the recordings were done in the 1980s on a boombox, which had built-in microphones like the one you see here. And my dad was a lot older than me, so he did not know that. So this first tape I'm going to play for you comes from my sophomore year in college. And this is the end of my winter break. I'm home with my family, and I was 19 years old, and I did what all 19-year-olds do at 19 on a break. I went out with my friends every night. We saw the midnight movies. We saw The Wall and Rocky Horror. We saw bands. We got drunk. We got stoned. And I would come home at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. That was just what I did every night for 4 weeks. This is the last night of my winter break. I'm at my parents' house. I'm about to go to the Greyhound station, and my dad wanted to have a talk with me about my last 4 weeks, among other things. So, January 1985.
Say no to anybody. How do you know that? I know that by observation. I wasn't the one that asked you to go out every night and have a good time. Well, I don't know what it is. That's what you do. When you want the car, you're nice. Very nice. I hardly asked for the car. Yeah, because you know you can't have it after 1:30 in the morning. That's right. Because like this, you'd be out at 4 o'clock every morning. I'm just trying to lead a normal life. You and Mom got it. It is not a normal life the way you're leading. What is a normal life? It means to be respectful and to do things that are asked of you when you're asked, not as some things. You got to go out looking at records. Nobody's telling you that you can't do your records. I hope you'll make your living as a disc jockey. I will. Stop to death the rest of your life. I'm glad you have an optimistic attitude for it. I have. I want you to do what you want to do. I'll always start you the rest of my life. Because that's what you'll do with that kind of crap. You got to bring your people in the same thing. Well, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. You think it's going to last forever, my friend? You're giving me an inferiority complex. Tell me I'm not going to. Sure you are. You're not going to make it. I hope you starve. Go into business for yourself. Well, I'm not interested in that. I don't want you to go into business for yourself. Oh my God, you're sitting on all my posters. You can do anything we got for you, please. Nobody gets such a hard time from their parents as I do. 3/4 of the parents don't give a shit. Well, I don't see what's wrong with going out every night during a vacation. It's not that. It was every night all summer.
There you go. That's my dad. I'll bring him back in a few minutes. Thank you.
So there's this book and another book I did here at the library. If anyone's a member, please pick it up and read it and let people know. This is a book about the DC punk rock scene. I was a teenager when all of this happened. So each chapter starts with a song. This chapter is The Motherfucking Circle. The name of the band is Swizz. The song is Won't Breathe for You. And then I'll go right into the story. When your teeth fall from your face, I'll be there to catch them. And with your smile in my fist, I'll do all your smiling. DuPont Circle's where all the punks hang out, said Lars. You never been there? That's the end of that chapter. For however good or horrible that is. So you know, this is the first time I've ever read out in public. You did great. This is the first time. No, I mean, this is the first time I've ever read in public anywhere. I'm like dyslexic. I hate reading in front of people, so.
I can see your planes flying and hear your bombs crashing and your cars humming and your guns blasting. They don't affect me no more, 'cause I'm on the wrong side of the grass.
I got involved with the antagonist movement. I believe it was 2003. I was DJing at this East Village bar called Niagara. I was playing rock and roll there on Monday nights. And there was a bartender there, a bald guy. And, you know, we didn't really talk much my first couple of weeks DJing. He's like, you know, we have this thing called the antagonist movement. Do these fanzines, you know, writers, stories. Here, have one. I said, okay, thanks a lot. And I felt obligated that somebody gave me something to read, that I should actually open it up and read it. And the next week I was back at the bar DJing, and I said, hey, I read your fanzine, man. I really enjoyed it. I said, it's really good stuff. He's like, oh, you should check it out. We have a bunch of stuff. We have an art show. We have a writer's night. What's the writer's night? He said, oh, people write 5-minute stories and tell their stories. I said, well, that's cool. Some time passed. Could I come to the writer's night and play a tape with my parents? And Ethan said, that's a great idea. You know, we break the rules. Why don't you come and do that? I showed up with a boombox and a tape of my dad and I going at it. And the crowd laughed and they roared. They thought it was hysterical. And I continued to play tapes of my parents. And after sitting there and listening to people read their poems and tell their stories, I said, well, this stuff's not that good. I can write a story. I can write a story better than what I'm hearing in this room. And I began to write. After a couple years of doing this weekly Sunday night thing, I had accumulated a lot of stories. Ethan Minsker said, why don't we put a little chapbook together for you? We'll have some illustrators and some animators, give me some photographs, and we'll have a book out. Believe it or not, in 2005, I didn't have a computer, so I would come to Ethan's house once a week and sit there and I would type up my stories, because all of my stories were done on paper with a pen. We put out my book. It's called Somewhere Between a Punch and a Handshake. I believe it came out in 2005. After years, I developed a one-man show based around my stories and the tapes of my parents. It's a one-man show with a slideshow. Thanks to Ethan and thanks to the antagonist movement for giving me an opportunity. It's something I never thought of doing. I always wanted to perform and entertain people, but I never knew what the platform for that would be. And the writer's night, the Fahrenheit, got me started.
Join me now. Together we'll all one day be on the wrong side of the grass. We'll all be on the wrong side of the grass.
Here, take a magazine.
Gracias.
De nada. Es una magazine y un DVD también. It's a magazine.
I first heard of the antagonist movement through the Dolls of Lisbon movie. Then one of the members from the collective I work with, Central Dogma, went to New York and met some of the guys from the antagonist. Through that connection, I got introduced to the motto sign. So I sent some artwork to the family issue, and it got published too. So then I traveled to New York to meet the antagonist so we can make a connection to work together so they can come down to Ecuador to participate at the street art festival that we run in Ambato City, which is a little town in Ecuador. At the beginning, I felt identified with the antagonist movement since we have something similar in Ecuador, you know, a bunch of artists in different areas who work together. What really struck me about the antagonists was the relation they have between each other and the community. Like, you can put together these shows for such a long time and be so strong and constant about your work. You know, how working in group, it's really hard, and especially between artists when, you know, the egos start to compete. But I find that the antagonist movement is really open and friendly and loving. So I guess that's why it works so well, because every member gets accepted as a family. There's no such thing as competition between artists. I grew up in a really small town, a small city, so all the people at the town were really crazy. At the beginning, I felt like I was the only sane person in the whole town. I discovered my creative self, and that kind of saved my life because I was drowning in depression and going crazy for not fitting in. When I started doing artwork, at the beginning it was for myself, and I was so ashamed and shy to show it to anybody. Come back from school and just do my artwork, and the only person that knew I was painting was my mom. And she was really supportive, and she was like, you should show it somewhere. And I was like, no way, this will never see the light, ever. When I was around 13, I think, I just reached a point of frustration and got really depressed because I just felt I didn't fit in anywhere. And, you know, my city is like 300,000 people, so it's a really small place to grow up in. And everybody is like, you know, robots. They all look alike, they all listen to the same music, they all do the same stuff. And when you start to feel different and you cannot, communicate as a normal person with other people, it just reached a point where I stopped trying to fit in. I was like, okay, I'm a weirdo, I'm a freak, and I'm going to accept this. But you know, at that age, you need friends, you need a social life, you need to be accepted. So I decided I didn't want to eat anymore or go to school anymore. I will just lie in bed, and my mom will be like, you need to go to school, and be like, no way, I'm not going to that school. And my mom will come and she will dress me, like literally take out my pajamas, and she will put the clothes on me and be like, okay, stand up, you are going to school. I was like a walking ghost, trying all the time to be low profile. I started making art. I painted alone, and then when I was like 21 or so, I got this boyfriend that I show some of the pieces, and I used to make pieces like this big, really, really little. And he was really despectful, like, you know, you should do them bigger, but he never even saw them on detail. When I came back home and I was like really frustrated, I was like, yeah, I'm going to make it bigger. So I started making them a little bigger, and then I figured out I need them to be more bigger. So when I was shopping for a big canvas, I was like, this is not big enough. I'm going to paint it on a wall, outside. That's when I started researching for street artists that could teach me something. And then I found this guy at my college, and I went to him and be like, hey, I want to paint on a wall, but I don't know a thing. And he was like, you know what, just go ahead and paint it. When I did that, that's when the thrill began. I just felt this emotion that painting on the street makes me feel. It's like when you paint alone in your studio, it's quiet and you're by yourself, but then when you are out in the open and everybody's looking at what you're doing, especially if you're a little shy about it, like me, like electrifies my whole self, getting people to watch it and comment on it, sounds and the street noise and the kids passing by and being like, hey, look at this little girl painting this la la la. And you know how the kids are always so interested in art, it's crazy. So I fell in love with street art, and that's my thing. I paint on walls, and if ever get took out of me, I guess I will go back to be a crazy girl, like at the beginning when I didn't do that.
Forward summer turns to winter's cold. Epic days of young and old.
O dibujas y te la muestro a mi hermano que acaba de llegar a la casa, o se la regalo a mis amigos en el colegio, o se la muestro a los chicos de la banda. Más allá de eso, me gusta la posibilidad de como que tú puedas hacerla y sentirte con el derecho y creer en ti, de que puedes expresarte y de que tu voz también es importante. Es como, aunque tengas una banda fea, me parece súper chévere de que pienses de que tú también tienes derecho de que la gente la pueda escuchar y que tú la puedas gritar. Vengo trabajando desde hace un par de años con un proyecto de editaciones independientes que se llama La Silla. Y lo que pretende La Silla es nada más que ser como una plataforma multidisciplinaria en donde puedan converger varios tipos de artistas como diseñadores, ilustradores, artistas plásticos, dibujantes, tatuadores, grafiteros, street arteros, músicos o gente incluso que no tenga nada que ver con ello y que se atreva como un poco a expresarse por ellos mismos. Las publicaciones que yo hago comenzaron siendo una fotocopia y ya luego desde el número 6 entré en la imprenta. Y ya desde que se entró en la imprenta son se han jugado siempre con ediciones de 1000 números. Me gusta mucho pintar, me gusta pintar bastante las paredes, porque me gusta como intentar liberar las paredes, democratizarlas, volverlas de todos, ¿no? Además me parece súper feo el espacio gris. Entonces yo escribo HTM, que significa hazlo tú mismo, que en inglés se escribe do it yourself y se escribe con letras DIY. Entonces yo escribo esto porque primero me gusta intentar pensar que lo que yo hago es una cosa que podemos hacer todos, y entonces me gusta como de alguna manera intentar a la gente provocar esta reacción, intentando que ellos puedan realizar también sus propios productos. Sin necesidad de que haya intermediarios o sin necesidad de que tú incluso sepas hacer o no las cosas, porque me parece que es súper chévere que todos podamos jugar e intentar aprender haciendo cosas nuevas. Entonces, cuando yo comencé mi proceso o mi proyecto artístico mi proyecto de pintar, comencé a pintar HTM y lo comencé a hacer como con cosas que todos podamos hacer. Una práctica que no les termine quitando dinero o mucho dinero. Yo conocí los fanzines cuando me los regalaban, porque lo que más importaba era difundir la producción gráfica que estaba ahí, más no conseguir dinero por ello. Además, que el alcance económico de ganancia con los fanzines es muy limitado. Entonces, como que la motivación no va desde ahí, va como más bien como que la gente pueda generar autonomía a través de prácticas artísticas o culturales que le permitan desarrollar productos sin necesidad de tener un intermedio o sin necesidad de tener una dependencia directa o indirecta con cualquier situación económica, institución o medio de producción. Entonces pienso que el fanzine cumple con todas estas cosas. Por eso me parece súper importante desarrollar fanzines y desarrollar publicaciones independientes, porque además rompen también una estructura de producción o de dependencia de parte del productor y de parte del consumidor hacia terceros.
Woke up like a abandoned child.
I got involved with the antagonist art movement the first time when I saw their film, Dolls of Lisbon. It was submission for the Fluid New Media Lab Dystopia exhibition. We start playing it, and all of a sudden, I start seeing all these artists that are from New York, others from Europe, and a few from Ecuador even, like Latin America. And I recognized some of the characters, but they were all doing like these great pieces of work and the street art. After that, I had like a special connection with the film because I had that experience that was a thrill. The second time I saw it, I started getting more familiar with the characters. At the point of presenting it at the Queens Museum of Art during the festival, Ethan showed up. I got to meet Ted and some other of the folks personally. And it was a really exciting moment. The antagonists really had their strategy together on how to promote themselves. I started to get even more connected with the antagonists as I was invited to planning meetings. The question was how and what can we do to get to Ecuador, which is the country where I'm from. The idea started to also evolve into something that made sense locally as well as it made sense for the group. Eventually, we all went to work with the collective I have in Ecuador, which is Dogma Central. And I was so surprised to see that two collectives had like similar projects, similar lines of work. Being involved with the antagonist, I was encouraged to be a curator. But through the group that I was being pushed to kind of like do some more profound writing, do a little bit of more research on other things that are beyond what it's being presented to me. So I'm aware of the bigger picture of the contemporary arts. Personally, for me, being involved in the arts, it is a way to feel better about myself. But I can't do it on my own. I feel insecure, so I need to be in a social environment to make art. I started to facilitate their ideas, and I noticed that I had a talent for production. I was serving my purpose. I felt a sense of belonging. Before that, I felt like disconnected of society or being minimized as somebody who wasn't doing anything important. Before that, I was just a consumer, but now I was a participant.
Desde que me dejaste por ese gil, multiplicaste mis ansias por mil. Mis noches son un delirio febril.
I first met the antagonists in 2007, and it was in autumn. We met them in Berlin to make their art show there and doing the film This is Berlin, Not New York in Berlin. And before, I didn't even know them, and I had no idea what the people are doing. How we met them was not the normal way you meet people, because a friend of us knew somebody who was in New York. She got in touch with the antagonist. In Berlin, we had a studio. She went by the studio one Sunday afternoon, and she came in and said, oh, okay, I know some people from New York. They want to come to Berlin and want to meet some local artists, doing some collaboration. At first, I was a little bit surprised because this doesn't happen that much. The thing is, contact never stopped. We met other people involved with the Antagonist. They came to Berlin. Working together with the Antagonist influenced us not only in an artistic way, also it influenced in the way we are doing the projects now. We did something comparable or similar, bringing artists together from other countries. The good thing is working together with the Antagonists. You are in this group, you know all these people, you can collaborate with them. But on the other side, you have also time to focus on your personal work. I think there's a really good balance between these two sides. For me personally, doing art is some way necessary because it's a way to deal with myself, with my thoughts. When I'm in a bad mood, it's a good thing to going like very deep in this bad mood and to swim a little bit in this bad mood. And then there's a point and it makes like click and you say, okay, now it's finished and I'm done with that, and then it's better.
I started making art on my own, I guess, as a child. The older I got, the more it became much more of a lifestyle than a hobby. It was something, a carnal, a need that only can be filled with art making. I once had a conversation with Richard Hambleton. He told me the only thing better than heroin was art. I kind of feel that way too. It fills this void that I never found in religion. I never found it in relationships or in any other type of work. I went for the lifestyle. If I neglect the studio for a few months, I go into like a dark place with my head. I have a few childhood memories of art. I was born in the Mission District in San Francisco, and it's covered with murals. There's murals everywhere. Beautiful, beautiful, great works by Chicano artists. And the 70s and 80s Chicano art movement was really alive in the Mission. Around the age of 12, maybe 11, living with my dad for the summer. I didn't have anywhere to go, and I didn't have any friends in the Mission. I didn't really know anyone because I lived with my mom during the year in Colorado. So my dad signed me up for a silk screening class in the Mission Cultural Center. And I met this guy, Mike Roman. Taught me how to silk screen, make my own t-shirts and skateboards. Taught me how to stencil, just became one of my bigger passions, one of the things I really like to do. Then when I got back to school the next year, I noticed there was silk screening stuff in the school. And I asked my art teacher, who hated me, if I could use the silk screening stuff, if I could make t-shirts. So he said that I wasn't experienced enough to be using silk screens. Kind of put me off to art, but I was still doing it on my own. I actually made my own silk screening studio in my house. Around 14, my Uncle Bob took me to a Keith Haring exhibition, and it blew my mind. And I remember the most powerful piece that was in the final room. There were 4 pieces that were unfinished. They were just finished in the corners, but not finished all the way because he died before he could finish them. And I remember thinking that those were the most important pieces in the show. They actually showed how vulnerable you could be and how vulnerable life is. And then after that, I think I just really wanted to be an artist. You know, despite what anyone said, I had to be an artist.
Yeah. Thank you. Gracias.
Aquí estamos para invitarles a gozar, a bailar, a divertirse, a chupar a la gente que nos escuchan en los barrios, parroquias, cantones, caseríos, a la gente que está en el fin de semana chupando, vacilando, pegando sus chelitas, gozando a lo bien con sabor a caña, con guanaco desde Ambato, invitándote a estar en nuestra sintonía como siempre. Gózala mi pueblo, te lo dices, sabor a caña, sabor a grande, sabor a rocola, el comandante siempre pa'lante.
Ahora calcula la cula que actúa, estimula la mente malévola, directo a tu médula, modula realidad como fábula, estrangula, adula, mortal como el ébola, sin válvula de escape, cae, coagula, la sangre en el piso, pulula, nadie sabe quién lo hizo.
A lot of our artwork is somewhat related to punk rock, or that sort of New York City vibe to it. We call it brat art, or punk art. It really encompasses all styles of art. We try to design our group to work like a laboratory so that we can develop and progress and maybe change art in some way. And even if we haven't been successful at that yet, our system allows room for that. Try things that are not necessarily have an economic benefit. Kept that short for you.
Thank you for keeping it short.
Sorry.
So, se trata también de crear redes.
Because of that system, we have been allowed to not only show street art without being, bothered. We show in the galleries in the Lower East Side. We show in the Chelsea galleries. We also show in the museums. So, from doing this, we have grown from a tiny little thing into a larger organization.
Saca del fondo, lírica explícita, realista, contra conquista, armamentista sobre la pista, resista, asista, insista, lista para la batalla, tratando que cambie.
This workshop is based on sign painting and typography using printmaking methods. It's called Write, See, Talk. Some of you may be familiar with typography, some of you may not. You see it everywhere, so you can't help but be familiar with it. These letter forms and all the symbolism that you see, it's been used for thousands upon thousands of years. It's how we communicate with one another, whether you speak the same language or not.
The combination of having artists, photographers, and writers working together is the birthplace of the antagonist art movement as it is today.
Entonces, esta idea de unir fotógrafos, artistas y escritores en un solo lugar es lo que...
And now today everything is based in technology, so if you were writing a blog, the only way you access that blog is you have to actively search that out.
Entonces, la única forma de que tú puedes encontrar las cosas en...
What we find the value of doing a fanzine today is that we can physically hand that to somebody and then they can pass it off to somebody else. I can leave it in random locations like record stores, coffee shops, bars on the back of toilet seats, ATM machines on a seat of a train. And we reach a much larger audience by having people randomly come across it or pick it up.
Entonces lo interesante de los fanzines es que no es que tú necesariamente los buscas, sino
You as an artist are left to wait to see if a gallery or somebody else will accept your work and permission from somebody else to actually get a show. With doing a fanzine, you can put all of your work as a compact gallery and hand that and put it anywhere you want. So it really takes the power away from the middleman that allows your art to be seen. It used to be that fanzines were unrecognized, you would have to give them out for free, and nobody respected them. But what I find is the most powerful thing of a fanzine is that it can take someone who is voiceless, gives them a powerful voice.
Pero lo más importante de los fanzines igual es ese origen, es que le puedes dar
Nosotros lo estábamos desarrollando aquí como por los 90s, por ahí. Empezamos a hacer un fanzine que se llamaba Cerebro Obtuso.
So I'm just going to make a fanzine real quick here.
Entonces pueden agarrar así.
Está en la programación también.
But for this, I wanted people to get used to the traditional style of fanzines, which is paper, glue, scissors.
Después ustedes pueden ponerle texto. Esto es muy importante porque hay veces en las que se hace en la computadora y no se sabe cuál es cuál. Y el rato de imprimir es una... Entonces esto aquí es...
Grandma's on her deathbed resting. There's a witch on top the rooftop moaning, biting. Me and my brother and sister watch the midnight.
Creo que el movimiento antagonista para mí lo podría resumir como brotherhood o hermandad. Hermandad, una gran hermandad.
Kinda special. Mama's in the room with the Ouija board playing.
Y tenemos aquí como fanzines de todo el mundo que los he ido coleccionando con la colaboración de diferentes amigos y también con contactos a través de correspondencia y cartas desde 1990 más o menos.
Left in the darkness awakened. Father's still in the city, still.
Bueno, el proyecto empezó con una colección personal que después que quisimos enseñar a la gente que pueda hacerse sus propias publicaciones, que pueda autopublicarse. Entonces, para enseñar a la gente lo que nos ideamos es una serie de talleres en los cuales nosotros queríamos facilitarles lo que para nosotros fue más difícil de conseguir, que era el aparato de fotocopiar. Para nosotros, cuando logramos hacer un fanzine es como un acto de iniciación para un futuro alquimista de las letras o un futuro alquimista de la gráfica. En ese sentido hemos hecho talleres con niños porque nos interesan mucho los niños y los resultados de esos talleres son cosas como estas. Este material es un material al cual yo le tengo mucho respeto porque es generado por mentes bastante puras, diría yo, y que concibieron estos trabajos en un taller en el campo de la provincia de Tungurahua. Entonces tienen cosas como muy plenas y tienen ese aire de ser objetos iniciadores en tal vez una carrera o tal vez una pasión. Entonces creo que eso es lo que más me gusta de hacer fanzines y de enseñar a hacer fanzines.
My parents got divorced when I was 7. My mother moved to the other side of the city. Me and my sister were shuttled back and forth, half the week with my father and half the week with my mother. The days I was at my father's, he'd pick me up from school, and I would sit at his office till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, waiting for him to get off. He'd put me in the conference room with a long table and about a dozen chairs. I'd watch the TV for an hour or maybe 2. And then I would move to the pencils and paper and staplers. I'd put together little books and make copies on the copy machine, giving them out to friends at school. It was a way to escape. I felt like I was outside of the office, outside of school, doing something bigger than myself. I discovered fanzines, and I started my own. First it was about music, and then slowly it moved into arts. It's where I first learned to work with writers, artists, photographers, learning what personalities work best together. I was an editor, a publisher, somebody who was doing something that the community also embraced. Make it bigger, larger, stronger, with a farther reach. But a fanzine can only take you so far.
Tata! Ya se me movió el clavo, hijo de puta.
We want to build bridges to other cultures and small communities of artists. And we believe that by doing so, not only helps us understand more about art in general, it makes us understand the world we live in a little bit better. There's a lot of very talented artists out there, but unfortunately that's not enough to make it anymore. You have to be bigger than the individual. I not only push my own work, I push our group's work together, and that might make the difference in the end. We all want to succeed. The antagonist movement is something it's a selfish act that benefits the community, because we each want to help ourselves out, and in turn that helps out everybody else.
Tell me what you're thinking of it.